Members of council?
Maybe it's because you need a certain number of letters.
Good evening, members of council, staff, ladies and gentlemen. I see that we have quorum, and I call this planning meeting, public meeting under the Planning Act for July 10th, 2017 to order. It has been moved by Councillor Durley that the agenda for the July 10th, 2017 public meeting under the Planning Act be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. That is any conflicts of interest that members of council may have. Do any members have any conflicts of interest?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, nor do I. Can that be so noted? Thank you. We're now moving into the public meeting section, planning meeting section regarding a application for zoning bylaw amendment, and I have a notice that I'd like to read. This is a zoning bylaw amendment to permit the rezoning of the subject land from residential 1, R1 211, and agricultural A to residential 1, R1 for 2 retained lots and 5 new lots to be developed for a single detached residential uses. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment is a condition of consent approval that was granted on June 6, 2017 by Committee of Adjustment for 5 new lots. The Planning Act requires, under Section 3412, the Council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public of a proposed amendment to the zoning bylaw. This public meeting has been called to satisfy these requirements. Staff have indicated that notice of this meeting was provided by prepaid first-class mail to all persons who are listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 120 meters of the subject property on June 19th, 2017. The notice provided information on the property and the proposed amendment to the town's zoning bylaw as amended. In addition, the planning staff provided information to the applications. We also received any comments which member of the public may wish to offer. There is an attendance list on the table, and we would ask all present to print their name and complete mailing address if they wish to be notified of the passage of the amendment by council, should that occur. If a person or public body decides to file an appeal of a decision made by council in respect to the proposed amendment to the zoning bylaw and does not make oral submission at the public meeting or make written submissions to the town of Pelham before the proposed amendment is adopted or refused, the Ontario Municipal Board may dismiss all or part of the appeal. In closing, it is stressed that at this point no decision has been made on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, and therefore any comments received will be taken into account by council in their consideration. Ms. Weens, I believe you have a presentation that you'd like to present to us about this item. I'd ask you to proceed. Ladies and gentlemen, later on we will be hearing from the applicant and their presentation, and then any public input, followed by input from committee, and then presentation of resolutions. Ms. Weens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is a public meeting with respect to a zoning bylaw amendment application for 1611 and 1613 Lookout Street. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment application is to amend zoning bylaw amendments to amend 1611 Lookout Street from the residential 1-211 zone to the residential 1 zone, and to amend 1613 Lookout Street from the agricultural A zone to the residential R1 zone. Property is located on the east side of Lookout Street, north of Marlene Stewart Drive. Lookout Street forms the urban area boundary at this location, so lands on the east side are within the urban area boundary, lands on the west side are outside of the urban area boundary. The legal description of the property is considered to be part of Lot 3, Concession 7 in the town of Pelham. We have along Marlene Stewart Drive and Buckley Terrace and Filmori Drive are new residential single detached homes that are either under construction or have recently been constructed. And there are some additional vacant lands that have also been approved for single detached residential lots if they haven't been constructed yet to date. Opposite the lands on the west side is the golf driving range associated with the golf course, Lookout Point Golf Course, and then there is the Bell Tower to the north. The proposed development with respect to 1611 Lookout Street, there was a application for consent to create 2 new lots from this property. It's proposed that the existing lot located on Part 3 on the severance sketch shown there is to be retained, and then there would be 2 new residential lots proposed north of that existing single detached dwelling shown as parts 1 and 2 on the severance sketch. This application for consent was considered by the Committee of Adjustment on June the 6th and received provisional consent approval at that time. The second property is 1613 Lookout Street, and this too received provisional approval from the Committee of Adjustment for the creation of 3 new lots and 1 retained lot for a total of 4. The proposal is that the existing dwelling, which would straddle right now between lots 2 and 3, or parts 2 and 3 on the severance sketch, would be demolished, along with 1 accessory building. And the proposal is to retain an existing 4-bay garage on part 1 as an interim measure until a new dwelling is constructed. Ultimately, there will be 4 new dwellings constructed on these on this 1613 Lookout Street. With respect to the provincial policy statement, the lands are within the settlement area, and there are policies with respect to supporting infill and intensification in our settlement areas. The proposed consents do achieve a certain degree of infill on these lands. It's noted that we're right at the edge of the urban area boundary, and these 4 large lots or 5 new large lots do provide a bit of transition between the more urban development as we come down Lookout Street and then into the Lookout subdivision. The lands, the Greenbelt Plan does not apply as they are located within the settlement area. We are outside of the Niagara Escarpment Plan area. And with respect to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, we are within a built-up area of that provincial plan. And again, the provincial plans and provincial policies support infill and intensification in our urban settlement areas. With respect to the regional official plans, the lands are designated as a greenfield area. And regional policies provide that, again, the settlement areas and our greenfield areas will be the focus for long-term growth and encourage development that's appropriate for the character of the area. And so the policies of the greenfield area policies of the regional plan apply in this case. With respect to the town's official plan, the lands are designated urban living area built boundary, and there's also the presence of the highly vulnerable aquifer. Permitted uses in the urban living area are a range of residential uses, including single detached townhouses, semi-detached apartment dwellings, home occupations, and so forth, and other complementary uses that serve the residential area. There's no prohibited uses outlined on or with respect to these subject lands, or prohibited uses that are outlined with respect to the highly vulnerable aquifer in this area. So the single detached residential use is considered to be an appropriate use.
Sorry, an appropriate use?
An appropriate use, yes.
Sounded like inappropriate.
Sorry. With respect to the current zoning, you can see they're highlighted in red on the excerpt of the zoning schedule. The property known as 1611 Lookout Street does have a site-specific R1 zone category on it presently. It was rezoned a few years ago, and it permits a single detached dwelling, a home occupation, and uses, buildings and structures accessory thereto. The site-specific provision on it allows for lots having a minimum frontage of 30 meters. In this case, the consent approval provided for lots that are 21 meters in frontage, so the zoning bylaw will rezone these lands to meet the standard requirements of the R1 zone. And again, the 1613 Lookout Street is currently zoned agricultural. And again, agricultural uses that are permitted, or the zone uses that are permitted on lots of this size are a single detached dwelling and uses in buildings and structures accessory thereto. So the zoning will continue to permit one single detached dwelling and a home occupation and accessory buildings and uses on the same as what they're all currently zoned for. We're just changing the zone standards. So the zone standards there, you can see for the residential R1, we will exceed the minimum lot area requirements. We will exceed the minimum lot frontage requirements. And I would assume that the coverage and setback requirements, once we have building plans for that, will also all be met in this case. The lots are fairly large and for urban standard lots, but they do provide that transition between the agricultural interface at the edge of the urban boundary and the more urban uses that are inside the urban boundary. So thank you again for attending this evening, and happy to answer any questions or receive any comments with respect to this application.
Thank you very much. Members of the committee have any questions on the presentation at this point? There will be an opportunity for councilors to ask questions later. Okay. Thank you very much. Ms. Weens, I understand, is the applicant here and willing to or wanting to make a presentation?
Good evening, my name's Ken Gagnon of Upper Canada Consultants. Also with me is Jasper Pala, who's the owner of the southern property. Stephen Kaiser is unable to attend because he's away out of town on business.
Thank you.
So, we're just going up.
Sorry.
Which one are you doing?
Just get you going. There you go.
Are we going? Oh,
No, I wouldn't use the mouse, just use the keys.
World of electronics. Barb's gone through all of these types of details, so I won't bore you by saying it all over again. There's the two properties again. Mr. Pala's on the south side. These are two blocks that are 2 acres each in area. Barb clarified this. In imperial terms, there's 70-foot lots by 300 feet deep. They're very large, probably the largest lots created in Fond Hill over the last number of years. And the Kaiser lots are 75 foot. The existing house will be removed, and as Barb said, the 1 4-car garage that's on the northeast corner of the site will be, we're asking that be retained. This is the way the lots will basically sit, looking in amongst the surrounding lots to the east and the south, and across from the driving range. Initially, when we submitted the applications for consent, the staff report noted that the proposal conforms with the OP and the subdivision is not necessary because the road is existing, services are available, and the lot configuration is compatible, conforms with provincial policies, and conforms with the town OP. Public Works noted that the services are available, water, sanitary, sewers, all utilities. We just have to extend them north up onto the site. Some servicing adjustments will be required to accommodate that, and in order to deal with all those points of view, we'll be entering into a development agreement with the municipality for the applicant to pay for all utilities and installation of services at their cost. There's no environmental features at risk. Servicing is available. Extensions are required. Access by an existing arterial road. There shouldn't be any traffic issues. The traffic volume that will be coming off the site is very low. There will be large lots providing a gradual transition in. It's just simply infilling. So the severance applications were approved subject to these conditions. The zoning amendment, which is before you tonight, we have to do archaeological clearances, comprehensive grading, drainage plans, servicing plans, and that'll all be covered in the development agreement. Memorandum of understanding to deal with the park dedications, and demolition permits required for any buildings that will have to be removed. And of course, the last two are just legal matters that deal with the preparation of the deeds and registration. So this is what we're doing. The blue area, we're getting rid of that R1 211 special zone. We're just going to have it zoned R1, all the basic standard requirements relating to it. The northern part of the site is going from agricultural to R1, just all the basic standards as well, nothing special. And the northern lot, we're going to have a special provision in there that allows the accessory building to be there on site before the main use is there, which is going to be the single-family dwelling. Just to summarize, it conforms with all policies. The lots fit in with the surroundings. Servicing is easily provided. We're going to have a development agreement that takes care of all services. The proposed zoning will govern the construction of the homes on the lots in accordance with all the normal R1 standards of the town. And we look forward to your approval of the zoning amendment. There was some questions raised about accessory uses because we're leaving that existing four-car garage on the northern lot. Accessory uses under the zoning bylaw, you cannot be closer than 4 feet to any lot line. You can't be closer to the street than the existing dwelling. Maximum height is 12 feet and maximum coverage is 10% of the lot area. So you can't cover any more than 10% of the lot area with an accessory building. For instance, the lots are 22,500 square feet. So at a total building coverage, you can cover 6,750 feet. That would be the house and the garage. So if you have a large garage existing, that'll shorten the size of the house, but still 6,750 square feet is an awful lot of building area. The maximum coverage for an accessory building would be 2,250 square feet, and the existing building that's there now is only about 1,800 square feet actually. So we're not asking for anything special with regards to accessory buildings other than the existing one on the northernmost lot to be retained before the dwelling is constructed on the lot. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to respond.
Thanks very much, Mr. Gagnon, for your presentation. Members of council have questions. I see Councilor Ribbiak will start us off. Councilor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, just for clarification, so do you see ultimately that accessory building will not be closer to the road than the main house? It
No,
seems-
no, the dwelling will be, see if I can maybe back up.
The dwelling will be closer than the building that's left?
Absolutely. It's that silver sort of colored building, that white sort of building, that's where it's located. And the main dwelling would be on the property, be in the front of that.
In front of that, okay.
Yeah, so that would be in the backyard,
Yeah, then-
typical in
My question, Mr.
any
Mayor.
other
Thank you.
accessory building.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Gagnon? Councilor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Mr. Gagnon, are you planning to have any design guidelines in place for these lots? Are they going to be conforming with the surrounding
Well,
subdivisions, et cetera?
Basically, we're just staying with the R1 zoning. I guess there's architectural license for the builders to design their own homes and sell their own homes. The value of the lots is extremely high, which seems to impose that the dwellings will be very expensive, elaborate homes as well.
Councilor?
Second question, Mr. Mayor. Hydro services to these lots, will they be all overhead? They'll just continue with the overhead and overhead into the building?
My understanding is everything's going to be underground.
Okay. Good.
Thank you. And I believe, Councilor, I had similar questions. I think that's going to be covered by the development agreement.
Perfect.
Ms. Weems, will that be covered? So sidewalks, hydro, streetlights?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, the development agreement will deal with all of those requirements that you would typically have in a subdivision agreement, so it'll be a small subdivision agreement, short form agreement that will address all of those matters.
Okay, thank you.
That's fine.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Gagnon, for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, now is the time for public input. If there's members of the public that would like to present to council, and perhaps even ask questions of the applicant, we'd ask that you come up to the podium here, don't be shy, and give your name and address, and then you can give us some public input on this particular proposal. Doesn't look like anybody's game to do that at the moment. I'll ask one more time. As I think was said at the notice, if there are members of the public that do want to provide feedback and input on this, I believe staff will still be receiving comment in a written form following this meeting, so thank you. Now I turn to the committee input. Do any members of council have any input, any further questions that they may have regarding this proposal? Councillor Rubiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I take it that because it wasn't included in the presentation, that there were no written comments made by anyone with regard to this up to this point.
Thank you. Ms. Weems?
Mr. Mayor, through you, we did get written comments from agencies on this application, and then there was one comment that came in from a property owner that owns property on Fillmore Drive that backs onto this lot. It came in after our report was completed, but we would certainly be addressing those comments in our final report. There was concern raised with respect to the permission to retain the 4-car garage.
Okay.
And so those were public comments that came in after our report was written on, I believe, on Thursday last week.
Okay, thank you. Councillor?
That was it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of council? Okay, there being none, the next item is presentation of resolutions. It's been moved by Councillor King that Committee of the Whole receive the Department of Community Planning and Development report for information as it pertains to application file number AM0617 regarding 1611 and 1613 Lookout Street, and the committee direct planning staff to prepare a recommendation report on this application for council's consideration. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. That's it. It has been moved by Councillor Junkin that the public meeting under the Planning Act for July 10th, 2017 be adjourned. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.